Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's tourism lesson. My name is Tobile Mabuza. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Cybola Discovery Center. Today is tourism, grade 12, just in time, and our topic today is global events of international significance, which is presented by Tobile Mabuza. What you need to know as a grade 12 learner. You need to know that global events will be asked in question 9. And question 9 will consist of questions. It's not the only question that's going to be asked, but you need to be aware that question 9 will consist of the following topics: global events of international significance, political situations and unforeseen occurrences of international significance. The second one would be forms of payments when traveling internationally. Third one would be foreign market share and statistics regarding inbound international tourism. But you need to also be aware that section E consists of question 9 and 10. So though today I'm focusing on question 9, which is going to be the topic global events of international significance, political situations and unforeseen occurrences of international significance, it's also important to be aware that it's not the only question that's going to be asked within question 9, but we're just going to be focusing on global events as a topic, global events of international significance. So what's important to know about today is that today's lesson will mainly focus on global events of international significance, political situations, and unforeseen occurrences of international significance. And then what you need to know as a grade 12 learner about global events. Global events, you need to know the concept. You need to know the different global sporting events: FIFA World Cup, Wimbledon, Comrades, Tour de France, and Olympic Games. And then you also need to be aware of other global events such as the G7 summit, which was known as the G8, as well as summits on climate change. These need to be mentioned as examples. It's not really necessary for you to go and study these events, just be knowledgeable about them. Tourism is mostly about knowing what's happening, knowing the current affairs. So you don't have to go and sit down and study what the G7 is about and go into detail with all the information. Just have a basic understanding of these global events that I've just mentioned. Other global events as well as global sporting events. You also need to know about the positive and negative impact of global events on international tourism. You also need to know the impact of a global event on domestic tourism in the host country and also on the economy of the host country. You need to know the advantages and disadvantages for the host country within a tourism context, meaning that your answers need to be related in terms of tourism, and you also need to know about development in infrastructural services, investment, foreign exchange income, and multiplier effects. Meaning that when you work on the advantages and disadvantages for the host country within a tourism context, your answers, your advantages and disadvantages to work should play around infrastructural services, investments, foreign exchange income, and multiplier effect. But as we proceed with the lesson, you'll have more information and understand better how you will tackle what you need to know. You also need to know the following under political situations and unforeseen occurrences of international significance. You need to know concepts, what is a political situation, and an unforeseen occurrence. Examples of recent political situations such as civil wars, terrorism, and general unrest. Examples of unforeseen occurrences such as tsunamis, earthquakes, and other natural disasters, the global recessions, diseases, accidents, and economic upsets. You should just be able to identify recent examples. You do not need to study the unforeseen occurrences as such and political situations as such. Just be able to identify recent examples, meaning that you need to understand the definition or the concept of what is a political situation and also understand the concept of what is an unforeseen occurrence. So when you're faced with an example, you're able to easily identify based on the definition that you understood. So you apply what you are learning. The impact of these situations and occurrences on international tourism and the economy of the affected country. Now, we go into the concept global events. Grade 12s, remember, you are now working towards your final exam. Global events was done on the first week of grade 2012, 2023. You must have maybe forgotten some things. So this lesson will serve as a good way for you to revise what maybe you have forgotten, or just to polish up on things that you knew but now need to practice extra caution when tackling them in the exam. Now, what is a global event? So a global event is an event that will take place on a limited duration, that has a global reach, require significant public investment, and have impact on the people, environment, and economy of the host country. Global events are planned and organized in advance and held on set and recurring timeframes. So it is important to know that a global event will take place for a limited duration. It has a global reach, meaning that it would be known internationally and covered internationally, and also requires significant public investment. When we talk about public investment, we need maybe a lot of investment when it comes to financial investment in preparation for the global event. And a global event will have an impact on the people, environment, and economy and the host country. So over here, you can see that the global event somehow has an impact on the people, environments, and economy. And when you talk about people, environments, and economy, it should already be ringing that the three pillars of sustainable tourism do come into play when we are doing global events. And then the criterion that is used to determine whether an event is a global event. We look at, if you look at my picture over here, you can see that I've got the world globe. And around the world globe, I am emphasizing that this is global, the global events. We're talking about global events of international significance. Now, which criterion is used to depict or to determine whether a global event is a global event? It needs to generate huge profits. It needs to have multi-country participation, that many countries need to be participating in this particular global event in order for it to be considered a global event. Multi-country participation. Remember, multi means many. So in a global event, you've got many countries all over the world that are participating in the global event. And a global event needs to draw large crowds from all over the world, meaning that it needs to draw, meaning a lot of people need to have interest in it from all over the world. Like now, we are all concerned about the Rugby World Cup that is held in France. That means that particular global event has drawn attention from all over the world. And then it also needs to have multi-country interest. We are also interested as countries, different countries are interested, many countries are interested, hence the term multi is used. And then it also, in order for global events to be determined as a global event, it needs to have global media attention, meaning that all over the world, different media houses need to be covering what is happening within that particular global event. So global media attention in print and in electronic media. We should be seeing global events, maybe on billboards, should be seeing global events on televisions, we should be seeing global events as pop-ups when we are busy with our electronic devices. And in order for a global event to be considered a global event, it requires specialized infrastructure, meaning that we don't just wake up today and say we're hosting a global event. We need to prepare many years before in order for us to have specialized infrastructure. So all these aspects here, a global events generating huge amounts of profits, multi-country participation, drawing of large crowds from all over the world, multi-country interest, and global media attention in print and electronic media, and requires specialized infrastructure would be the criterion that is used to determine whether an event is a global event. So immediately when you know that there's multi-country participation, draws large crowds, generates huge profits, requires specialized infrastructure, multi-country interest, you know that it is a global event. And then we've got our global sporting events of international significance. I'm sure you're all familiar of the FIFA World Cup, which takes place once every 4 years. And we've also got the FIFA World Cup over here, just as examples, which took place in 2022, the FIFA World Cup, Qatar 2022, the host country was Qatar. And then we've got the FIFA World Cup, because FIFA World Cups are held once every 4 years. We've also got one in 2026. We're going to have one. The host country says for the first time it's going to be Canada, Mexico, and USA, meaning that over there's going to be three countries that are hosting one World Cup, which is going to the one FIFA World Cup, which is the FIFA 2026. And if you pay attention to the side of the slide, we have indicated that this is a global sporting event, which means that even when you identify any sporting event, and you're writing it in your in your answer book, in the exam, it is important to indicate not just global event, but indicate that it is a global sporting event. Hence the emphasis that you see over here. And then we've also got the Wimbledon Championships. It is a Grand Slam tennis tournament. It takes place annually in Wimbledon, London, England. And then you can see over here, I still indicated that's a global event. Please also familiarize yourself with the logos or the images of these global events and global sporting events. And then we've got the Comrades Marathon, which is an ultra marathon of approximately 88 kilometers, which is run annually in KwaZulu-Natal province. It takes place annually in the KwaZulu-Natal province, and as you all know, KwaZulu-Natal province is a province within South Africa. It takes place between the cities of Durban and Pietermaritzburg. It's the world's largest and oldest ultra marathon. Grade 12s, you cannot be getting this wrong when it is given in the exam. It is asked in the exam. You need to get it right. It's our home country hosting the Comrades Marathon in KwaZulu-Natal every year. You cannot miss this. The Comrades Marathon belongs to us as South Africans. So over here, you've got the Comrades Marathon logo. You need to be aware of it, be able to identify it. And we've also got the routes for the Comrades Ultra Marathon that takes place annually. And again, the emphasis here on the side, emphasizing that this is a global sporting event. And then we've got the Tour de France. It is an annual men's multi-stage bicycle race held mainly in France. It's 21-day long stages over a 23 to 24-day period, covering 3,500 kilometers. It's quite interesting. On bicycle cycling. Wow, sounds great. So you need to be familiar with the logo, and you also need to be familiar with the pictures that you know that it's a cycling tour. It's a cycling or bicycle race. And again, the emphasis lies here. Global sporting event. The Tour de France is a global sporting event. And then we've got the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games are the world's most famous sports competition with athletes from all over the world. It features winter and summer sport competitions. It's held once every 4 years. So we can see here we've already got our host country, our host city here is going to be Paris in 2024, and we can see these Olympic rings. Be familiar with these Olympic rings. Then you've also got Los Angeles, which is going to be the host city for 2024. We need to be aware of, 2028. They're going to be the host nation. And then be aware of the Olympic rings, because even though the host countries do change and so on, the host cities do change, the Olympic rings will always stay the same when it is the Olympics. And again, the emphasis is written there, global events. It's a global sporting event. Then we've got recent global sporting events of international significance that have taken place. The ones that I've mentioned are very important to know, but also be aware of current affairs, the most recent global events that we've had. We've had the 2023 Netball World Cup. We've also had the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Remember, the 2023 World Cup, if we look here, it was held in Cape Town in South Africa. We hosted a global event in 2023. Then we have the 2023 Rugby World Cup, which is taking place in France. And we've got the 2023 ICC Men's Cricket World Cup. And we've also got the 2023 Cricket World Cup Women's and the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup. So we've had a series of global events taking place around the world in 2023. So we are aware that, yes, we know that the different global events that I started with, but also be aware of the recent global events. Remember, you do not need to study the global events as such, but just be familiar and be able to identify that this is a global sporting event. So if we talk about the Netball World Cup, it is a global sporting event. If we talk about the 2023 Rugby World Cup, it is a global sporting event. If we talk about the 2023 ICC Men's Cricket World Cup, it is a global sporting event. If we talk about the 2023 Cricket World Cup Women's, it is a global sporting event. And if we talk about the FIFA 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, it is a global sporting event. Other global events of international significance. Remember, I spoke about global sporting events, but now I'm looking at other global events. So if an event does does have draw large crowds, media coverage internationally, multi-country interest, but it does not relate to any sports. We refer to it as an other global event. So if you look here on the heading, we've got other global events of international significance. We have the G7 summit, which was previously known as the G8. The G7 summit is the group of seven of the world's advanced economies, including Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, United Kingdom, and the United States, as well as the European Union. And then we've got the summit on climate change, which is known as the Conference of the Parties, COP28, which means that it is the 28th Climate Change Conference in 2023, where countries that signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change attend the conference. So you would look when in previous question papers, maybe you see COP27, COP26, the figure will always change. It will be COP28 because what? Why this year is COP28? Because the 28th conference on climate change that is being held in 2023. So next year in 2024 will be the COP29. So the numbers are always changing, but it is still the conference of the parties, the conference on climate change, where countries come together to discuss issues relating to climate change. Then if you look here, you can see over there we've got the G7 logo, and the countries that attend the summit. Then you've also got the COP28 logo there. And remember, it is another global event. And then the positive and negative impact of hosting global events on international tourism. Remember, international tourism. Grade 12, when you answer, we get questions regarding global events, and maybe they ask you, what is the positive or negative impact of global events on international tourism? You need to think very carefully, answer very carefully. You need to be cautious of what you're being asked. Are you being asked for the advantages of global events on international tourism, or the economy, or domestic tourism, or the people of the host country, whatever? You need to be very aware of what you're being asked so that you can structure your answers accordingly. Because you might think, it's an easy question, but then you need to be aware, what are you exactly being asked? So on this particular slide, you can see that we're looking at the positive and negative impact of global events on international tourism. So the positive impacts there would be infrastructure improved to world-class standards, and then proven organizing abilities, meaning that if we host a global event, or a country is hosting a global event, gets an opportunity to prove that they are able to organize things quite well if the event becomes a success. And global events also increase both domestic and international tourism. So you'll find that in the domestic level, there'll be a lot of tourists who are traveling within the borders of their country, which is stimulated by the hosting of this global event. And there'll also be a lot of tourists from international countries, which sometimes regard them as inbound tourists who'll be coming into the country which is hosting the global events. And then there'll also be repeat visits and increase in foreign tourist arrivals. Those are the positive impacts of global events on international tourism, and there'll be an enhancement and recognition of international cultural diversity. And also, there will also be a social cohesion, like we can see now with the Rugby World Cup 2023 held in France. As much as it's taking place in France, we must be sure that the country there is very united as a country. And also here in South Africa, we are united again, practicing social cohesion. We are all hyped up, happy about the 2023 Rugby World Cup, and we are supporting our box. So also, when you look at the negative impacts, the negative impacts of international tourism, we've got negative publicity if something goes wrong. So if a global event is being hosted, it is very important to be cautious that there will be a lot of media coverage. So if anything, the slightest thing goes wrong, there will be negative publicity for that particular country or that particular city. And then there'll be an increase in criminal activity, and there'll be a culture shock, as not everyone in the world accepts cultural differences. So those are the positive impacts of hosting global events on international tourism, as well as the negative impacts. And then the impact of hosting a global event on the domestic tourism in the host country. So you remember what I said, that when you are asked the impacts, just be aware with how you need to answer. You need to be cautious In this particular slide, we are focusing on the impact of hosting a global event on domestic tourism. Remember, throughout in grade 10, you learned about domestic tourism, that it's got to do with traveling within the borders of your own country. So, what is the impact of hosting a global event on domestic tourism in the host country? The positive impact is that domestic tourists are likely to participate in a unique global event as it is hosted in their country of residence. So you might find that we're all happy and we all want to participate within the global event. We want to attend the global event because it is very unique. It doesn't come all the time, and we just want to put our mark and say, I once attended a global event. So chances are some domestic tourists would be interested in attending that particular global event. That is one of the positive impacts. And then also domestic travel may increase due to improved facilities, attractions, and services, meaning that maybe now it is easier to get around, it's easier to go to certain attractions um, due to our improved facilities and attractions. And this can be beneficial during the events and also after the events, because the facilities that were improved after the event would also be beneficial for domestic tourism post the event, after the event. And then increase in domestic tourism caused by opportunities associated to global events. And then the negative impact there, major construction in infrastructure taking place may discourage domestic tourists to travel, meaning that while we are preparing for the events, you might find that there's major construction. Remember, in the other previous slide, we spoke about that global events need specialized facilities or specialized infrastructure. So those would need construction, and while there's construction, domestic tourists might be discouraged to travel because there would be a lot of traffic or infrastructure taking place, closure in routes and so on, which discourages them to travel, or certain facilities or attractions would be closed down for upgrading, and that would lead to a drop in domestic tourism. And then prices are usually higher during global events due to an increase in demand. So sometimes you might find that domestic tourists would be discouraged to travel because now the prices are higher due to the global events, because there's an increase in demand for those facilities and services and goods during global events. And then us as domestic tourists, we're like, I can't go anywhere. I cannot afford to go anywhere because prices would be very high. Places may be fully booked. Yes, you might have anticipated that, yes, I'll be attending the global event. Maybe you had anticipation that I want to go to France to attend the Rugby World Cup. But then when you're trying to make bookings on the last minute, on the eve of the World Cup commencement, you realize that places are fully booked. You cannot even get a flight. You cannot even get sorry, we're still on domestic tourism. Sorry, yeah. Places may be fully booked for domestic tourists, which should maybe discourage them on traveling within the borders of their own country. And then also congestion and overcrowding will discourage domestic tourists. So if there's a global event, you find that many places become congested and there's overcrowding, and domestic tourists might be discouraged to travel. So hosting a global event does have an impact on the domestic tourism in the host country. It has an impact on the people of that particular country when they want to travel. So right now, the Rugby World Cup in France, you might find that people are discouraged to travel there in France, around France, because of the global event. There's congestion and overcrowding, which will discourage those domestic tourists who reside in France to travel. And then we've got the impact of hosting a global event on the economy of the host country. So over here, remember what I said, grade 12, you need to focus. What are you being asked? And this is a very common one where they ask you about the impact of hosting a global event on the economy of the host country, meaning that your answers need to be economy related. Okay, positive impact would be increase in tourist arrivals, increase in foreign revenue, skills development, increase in the gross domestic product, creation of entrepreneurial opportunities and employment, increase in profits due to increased business transactions. So when we are hosting a global event, the economy of the host country will have an increase in the gross domestic product, there'll be an increase in skills development, and there'll be an increase in profits due to increased business transactions. Repeat visits, even after the event, which will result to sustained revenue. So grade 12, please pay attention when you give the positive impacts of the economy, that your answers need to be economy related. And then the negative impact of hosting global events on the economy of the host country. Large sums of money are spent in preparation of the global event. that is a disadvantage, meaning that the country that is hosting the global events will need to put in a lot of money in preparation for the global events. And then infrastructure may become a white elephant. In this case, when you talk about a white elephant, it is infrastructure that was built for a particular purpose, but after that purpose, it is no longer used or it's no longer user friendly, meaning that it's no longer being able to be used or it's neglected because it was built for that particular moment or that for that particular global event. But after the global event, that particular um, facility is no longer used. We refer to it as a white elephant. Infrastructure or facility that is no longer in use, that was built for a particular purpose, but it is no longer in use, is referred to as a white elephant infrastructure. Or could be a white elephant facility. But over here, we say that infrastructure may become a white elephant, meaning that it's infrastructure that is no longer used. Not literally a white elephant, but infrastructure that is no longer used, that was built for a particular purpose. Loss of employment, an example would be stadiums. With stadiums, you find that when we look at white elephants, stadiums were built and now they're no longer in use. They are no longer hosting as many events or no events at all. Hence, in Qatar, they built sustainable stadiums that were able to be removed after the global events, meaning dismantled after the global event. So those were temporary stadiums. So some countries now have found a way to work around not having white elephant infrastructure by just having temporary infrastructure that is built for the purpose of that particular global event for that particular time. But that is mostly successful if you use sustainable materials, things that you can easily dismantle and dismantle once you've built them and put them aside after use. And then loss of employment after the event is also a negative impact on the economy of the host country. So some people get jobs during a global event, but after a global event, people become unemployed. Remember that a global event takes place for a limited period of time. So there could be a rise in employment during the global event, but then there'll be a drop in employment after the global event, resulting to loss of employment. And then there'll be negative publicity if something goes wrong. So, as we mentioned before, negative publicity if something goes wrong. And remember that the country has invested large amounts of money. So, if something goes wrong and there's negative publicity, it does have an economic impact on that particular host country, because negative publicity would mean that maybe people now start running away from the global event, or now they don't come just because of the negative publicity if something goes wrong. Money invested may be more than profits generated, meaning that in order to determine whether a global event is successful, the money that was put in preparation for the global event must not exceed the profits made. So most of the time, the negative impact that host countries are faced with is that they put in so much money in preparation for the global events, and then the profits do not match the money that they put in. They do not match or exceed the money that they have put in preparation for the global event. And then the advantages and disadvantages of for the host country. The advantages over here include foreign revenue leads to a positive stimulus to the GDP. The multiplier effect comes into effect due to money spent by tourists in tourist visitor, increase in tourist visitor numbers. Investment opportunities come by for the host country. Infrastructure or facilities created for global events may be used after events, and that still benefits the tourism industry. And then the disadvantages, large sums of money are invested in developing infrastructure. There's also over investments during global events. After global events, the investment is no longer sustainable, meaning that you might have spent a lot of money in preparation for a global event. Then after the global event, it's no longer sustainable. The money that the money or the time that you have invested towards the global event is no longer sustainable. And then the white elephant infrastructures were only used during global events. This results to loss of investment. Remember in the previous slide, I explained what is a white elephant infrastructure. Infrastructure that was used with a particular service for a particular purpose, but now it is no longer in use. That would result to a loss of investment, because remember, to build that particular infrastructure, money had to be spent. And then fluctuations in the exchange rate. A strong currency has a negative impact on inbound tourism of the host country, thus leading to a decline in inbound tourist spending, and the GDP of the host country will decrease. So now if the currency becomes strong, the currency of the host country becomes strong, that would have an impact on inbound tourism, and it might be expensive for inbound tourists to be in that particular country, and that will lead to a decrease in the GDP of that particular country during the hosting of a global event. So those are the advantages and disadvantages for the host country. And then also part of the advantages, as we can see that the advantages of hosting global events outweighs the disadvantages. So there's many benefits to hosting global events. Increased foreign exchange, the host country increases foreign exchange, increase in foreign exchange, the host country increases the foreign exchange reserves, which can be used to pay for imports, and a weak currency during hosting of a global event for the tourism industry, as inbound tourists exchange their currency for local currency and get more local currency in exchange for their foreign currency. So as you know, when we did foreign exchange, we know that a weak currency is beneficial in the tourism industry. When the currency of a country is weak, we find that more tourists come to a country with a weak currency. So in this particular case, if in the host country they have a weak currency for that particular period of time, it will result in inbound tourists being able to spend more on attractions and services and staying for longer periods because they'll be getting more money in exchange for their foreign currency. And then over here, I have a summary. If you look at my summary, I've got 3 pillars of sustainable tourism, which means that you may get questions where we ask you about the impact of hosting global events, meaning the social impact of hosting global events, host country. So let's say maybe the question says, what is the social impact? Mention 2 social impacts of hosting global events for the host country. Then you need to know that your answers need to relate to the people, meaning that your answers need to be directed to people, as how will people benefit from how will the people of the host country benefit from the hosting of the global events. Then you also need to be aware, maybe you are asked, what are the environmental benefits or the environmental impacts of hosting global events? So you should be able to give negative or positive impacts depending on the question. This will be dependent on the question. So, but you need to know that your answers need to relate to environmental. So you don't just quick answer. You need to check, what are you being asked. Am I being asked about how maybe the global event is going to impact on the people of the host country? Or am I being asked how the global event is going to impact on the environment of the host country? Or am I being asked how the global event is going to impact on the economy of the host country? So you need to know how you would answer these particular questions. And remember, in grade 10, we learned about these 3 pillars. It was social was people, environment was planet, and then economic was profit. So just familiarize yourself with these again, because they also might come up in global events. Just make sure that your answers are directed to what you're being asked. So remember, you have people, planet, and profit. And we also know it as social is people, environment is planet, economic is profit. But the main summary or the main emphasis of this particular slide is to raise awareness to you that always check what you are being asked and give answers that relate to that what you are being asked. So if it's environment question, answers must be environment based. If it's economic related question, answers need to be economic based. Don't just say, I'm just answering impacts, I'm just giving advantages. Make sure that you channel them according to how you are being asked, because that is where many grade 12 learners lose marks when it comes to this particular topic. And then we've got political situations. A political situation is a situation that occurs as a result of problems. So over here on this particular slide, I'm looking at political situations and unforeseen occurrences of international significance. So a political situation is a situation that occurs as a result of problems within a country's government. So anything that is government related, government being unhappy, we regard it as a political situation. When the citizens of a country are unhappy with their government. So these keywords are very important, and these keywords will direct you into answering this particular, in able to identify whether it's a political situation or an unforeseen occurrence. Any demonstrations of violent behavior would be a political situation. Example of political situations include civil wars, terrorism, and general unrest. Then we have unforeseen occurrences. An unforeseen occurrence is something that happens that which takes everyone by surprise. It was not expected, meaning we could not predict that something is going to take place. We refer to it as an unforeseen occurrence. We could not predict that it's going to take place. That is an unforeseen occurrence, and it takes us by surprise and it was not expected. And then examples of political situations, we've got general arrests, such as riots and general strikes, protests and anti-government demonstrations, violent rebellions against the government, civil wars when one group of the population is fighting another group of the population, military coup when the military of a country takes over the government, often by force, and acts of terrorism, often based on different beliefs, bombings and killing of innocent civilians. And then you've also got genocide, mass killings of certain groups of people. And if you are listening to the news yesterday and today's news coverage, there was a bombing, hospital bombing in Israel, where it was seen as a genocide act. So we could consider that as political situation. And then over here, I've got an example. I've got examples of unforeseen occurrences. So we've moved from the concepts of what is a political situation, what is an unforeseen occurrence, and then we also went to examples of political situations, and now we are by examples of unforeseen occurrences. So over there we've got natural disasters, accidents, diseases, global recession, and economic upset. So we can see that this table is actually categorizing them. That when we refer to natural disaster, could be anything that relates to tsunamis, earthquakes, floods, cyclones, wildfires, avalanches, mudslides, hurricanes, droughts, lightning, volcanic activity would be classified as a natural disaster. Anything that has got to do with accidents, aircraft accidents, train accidents, stampedes, collapsing buildings, sinking cruise liners, imploding submarines, that is also regarded as an accident, as an unforeseen occurrence, but it's an accident. So we've got unforeseen occurrences, natural disasters, unforeseen occurrence, accidents, unforeseen occurrence, diseases, unforeseen occurrence, global recessions, unforeseen occurrence, economic upsets, meaning that all of these do form part of unforeseen occurrences. Then under diseases, we've got COVID-19, we've got cholera, we've got influenza, malaria, tuberculosis, any disease. Maybe the disease is not listed here, then in your question paper, you get something that's about a disease or a sickness. Just know that under examples of unforeseen occurrences, it will classify as a disease. And then global recession, we've got the 2009 global recession, the 1991 global recession, and the 2020 COVID-19 global recession. Remember, when we refer to global recessions, it's an economic concept where the economies globally are not performing, high rates of unemployment, high rates of inflation. So we do have global recessions and we regard them as unforeseen occurrences. Then you've got economic upsets, meaning that economies maybe are not doing so well. Like 2008, 2009, there was the US economic upset. In 2010, you had the European sovereign debt crisis, and in 2012, you had the Greek financial crisis. So anything that has got to do with the economy being upset, not going well, could be categorized as an economic upset, as an unforeseen occurrence. So you do not necessarily need to know these, study these, but you just need to be able to identify based on their categories and also give the name of that particular occurrence. So my advice in the exam would be to give the name, to give the example in holistic form. Say it is a natural disaster, an earthquake. It is an accident, an aircraft crash. It is a disease, COVID-19. Don't just maybe say COVID-19 or just say disease. Always when you're answering grade 12, protect yourself. Protect yourself. Answer things in full, leaving no room for any error. And then the impacts of unforeseen occurrences on international tourism. The tourism industry will come to a standstill. So let's say maybe there is a natural disaster, or there is a disease outbreak, or there is an accident. The tourism industry will come to a standstill in the affected areas as majority of the infrastructure would be damaged. This would mostly relate in natural disasters, that there will be cancellation of flights because why infrastructure is damaged, or cancellation of holiday packages or bookings. Tourists will not be able to communicate with people in affected areas to determine the extent of damage and will rather not show up. Tourists will avoid the area and travel to alternative destinations, and this means that there will be a decrease in tourists. There will be prolonged periods of zero tourism activities, meaning that there will be no tourism taking place until infrastructure has been rebuilt. And tourists, of which it's very rare, but this can be seen as an upside or a positive impact of an unforeseen occurrence. Tourists may flock or travel in large numbers to an area to witness an unusual, unforeseen occurrence. Though it's very rare, most of the time we focus on the disadvantages or the negative impacts of unforeseen occurrences. But there could also be just that little one that is positive, as it might draw tourists to come and visit that particular place that has had unforeseen occurrence. And then there'll be a decrease in tourist numbers. If tourists visit, they stay for shorter periods due to the unforeseen occurrence. There could be a lot of confidence in the destination when it comes to safety measures. Tourist attractions can get destroyed. Before the country can recover from one natural disaster, another one occurs, thus complicating the rebuilding process. As we've seen, we've suffered from floods here in South Africa, in the KwaZulu-Natal provinces and other provinces, such as the Eastern Cape. Find that the rebuilt infrastructure, and then comes the floods again during the rebuilding process, which can be a negative impact that they suffer from. Destruction of tourism infrastructure, economic and physical. This will all be due to unforeseen occurrences. Disruptions to normal day-to-day operations, and also breakout of diseases during our unforeseen occurrences, some of our unforeseen occurrences. And then impacts of unforeseen occurrences on the economy of the host country. There would be job losses due to damaged infrastructure, which would have a negative impact on income earnings. There'll be a GDP which is negatively affected. There'll be loss of foreign revenue. When you talk about foreign revenue, money coming in from coming into a country through inbound tourists, there'll also be loss in profits, decrease in tourist numbers. Loss in profits may lead to retrenchments, closure of tourism businesses, higher unemployment, negative impact on the country's economic growth, and negative impact on the multiplier effect, as there will be decrease in tourists visiting, thus leading to a decrease in spending. So those are the impacts of unforeseen occurrences on the economy of the affected country. Remember what I said? We always need to know which impacts you are being asked about. So in this particular slide, we're focusing on the impact of unforeseen occurrences on the economy of the host country. And then we've also got a decline in we also have a decline in foreign tourist arrivals, which will decrease foreign income. Multiplier effects will be negatively affected due to fewer visitors visiting, and domestic travel to affected areas will decrease, resulting in decreased visitor numbers and spending. And also be careful not to mention one thing, be repetitive, still sitting on the same point when you answer grade 12. So just want to take us a bit back. Okay. Okay. I'll just mention what I want to mention. Meaning that as grade 12, we want you to be very alert when you answer these type of questions on impacts. Always make sure that you mention, let's say we're talking about what is the economic impact of an unforeseen occurrence. We don't want you to keep on saying there will be job losses, there will be higher unemployment. You're basically repeating the same thing when you're saying job losses and unemployment. Just be careful when you're answering that you don't find yourself repeating the same thing over and over again. and also check the mark allocation. And then over here in this particular slide, done the summary, just go back. Okay, over here we've got the examples of recent political situations. You can see here we've got the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which initially began in 2014 but escalated in 2022. Then you've got the ongoing Israel versus Palestine conflict, which took place in 2023, which started after the Hamas group targeted major cities of Israel with almost 3,000 rockets in 20 minutes on 7 October 2023. So these are just examples. So you would be able to see as you're reading this that no, this has got to do with political situations or the government of the government of a country and the citizens being unhappy. And then you've also got the South African national shutdown and protest held by the political parties, economic freedom fighters, which is also an example of general unrest, which is also we will also categorize it as a political situation. And then if you look here, we've got an activity from 2021, which is the May-June tourism question paper. Study the cartoon of global events in January 2020 below and answer the questions that follow. It's a very visual question. As you can see, they say identify the unforeseen global occurrences A, B, and C in January 2020. So we can see A, we can see B, we can see C. So with this particular question, we can see that you're being asked about unforeseen global occurrences. And then 9.1.2, discuss one way which an unforeseen global occurrence B impacted on global tourism industry after March 2020. So based on the slides that I've given you about unforeseen occurrences, I think you should be able to answer this. And remember that the global tourism industry, we could synonymize this in global tourism industry as international tourism industry, whereas in the slide we spoke about the impact of unforeseen occurrences or impact of global events on international tourism. So that global is synonymous to international tourism industry after March 2020. So you'd be able to give your discussion there of one way. Then over here is the answers for that particular question that you can use to see whether you are able to answer correctly. And then we've also got an activity from 2021, May-June tourism question paper, where also we were addressing question 9.2, study the information below and answer the questions that follow. So you'll have a lot of questions that address you'll have some questions in question 9 that address political situations of international significance and unforeseen occurrences of international significance. But given on how you've paid attention from beginning of the year, when your teacher was teaching global events of international significance and unforeseen occurrences, you will be able to answer these particular questions. So over here, they say departure information at Dubai International Airport at the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you look on the status of this flight schedule, the status of these flights. Then they say from the information above, explain how the outbreak of COVID-19 impacted on the status of international flights. You can also answer that. Give one reason why the flights above were cancelled. I'm sure based on everything that we've done, you'd be able to give good reasons there. And discuss 3 ways in which the cancellation of flights affects the airline industry. So always check from which context you are being asked. So if you look at this question, they're asking, discuss 3 ways in which the cancellation of the flights affects the airline industry. And then you have the marking guideline then for question 9.2.2 up to 9.2.3, 9.2.1 up to 9.2.2. And then tips in preparing for question 9 for the final exam. Can use your previous preparatory examination papers, and you can get these preparatory examination papers. They're easily downloadable on the website that is written there under mock exams. And you can use your previous NSD tourism question papers, which you can find in this particular website that is stated below. From me to you, grade 12s, good luck with your final exam. All the best. Remember to apply the tips that we gave you. And now I'm handing over to my partner, my colleague, Maggie. Thank you.
Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's tourism lesson. My name is Maggie Mautlane, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. As promised last week, we said we will be here today, and here we are. My today's lesson, we are going to do health and safety. And then when you check health and safety in your previous question paper, it is done in question number 2, right? Just after when you have done with your calculations with time zones. And then under health and safety, I'm going to start first with health. Remember, we are expecting tourists to come to our country. Now we've got some issues that we are going to discuss so that when we advise our tourists to come to our country, what must they expect, how must they behave, and then what must they do in terms of those things that they will come across. And then under health, I'm going to do concepts. Concepts such as World Health Organization, the acronym WHO. I'm going to do health certificates. I'm going to do travel clinics. I'm going to do compulsory vaccinations and recommended vaccination. When you do this topic, these are the concepts that you must know. Let us repeat. We have World Health Organization. We will talk about it. What is it? We are going to do health certificates, the travel clinic, compulsory vaccination, and also recommended vaccinations. Let us repeat what we're going to do. These are the concepts under health. The World Health Organization, health certificates, travel clinic, compulsory vaccination, together with recommended vaccination. In front of me, I have a logo that represents World Health Organization. Just check the logo. In all the health facilities, you will see this type of a logo, especially this one in the center. But the one that we're going to concentrate on is the one that represents the World Health Organization, WHO, as I was saying. Now let us define or explain or understand when we talk about World Health Organization. In here, I say it is United Nations agency. What are the agencies? They are people or a group or a body that is tasked. They are given a task with coordinating international health work to promote the highest possible level of health for all people. All the continents, 7 of them with all the nation in. We've got this agency that are tasked with coordinating international health work to promote the highest possible level of health for all the people. They know we are visiting country to country. Now it is their responsibility to make us aware which disease or what must we do if ever we have that type of a situation in any country that is around the world. I have, as promised, health certificates. What are health certificates that we are talking about? I say they are official documents that are issued and signed by health authorities. We've got authorities that are responsible for signing these health documents. Not everyone must sign them, but we've got those that are called official health authorities that are listed as officials that must be responsible for making sure that if ever you are to ask for that type of a document, they are responsible for signing that type of a document. And then I've got an example of an international certificate vaccination or a prophylaxis. This is an example of a certificate that will be issued to a tourist if ever they have been immunized or they are given a specific vaccination in order for them to allow to travel. And then it will have this sign. Remember, I was talking about World Health Organization. So that certificate that will be given to a tourist after vaccination, it must have this logo of World Health Organization. And then where do you get this health certificate? I have travel clinics. There are so many clinics in the countries, but specifically this one. Why we are specifically talking about health clinics? And then I say health clinics is a clinic specializing in providing for healthcare needs of a tourist, specifically for a tourist. An ordinary person, I can't wake up without going anywhere outside my country to go to a travel clinic. Only tourists that are to travel, whereby they will be provided with a health care need. And then we are talking about travel clinic. You can get immunization from there as an injection, or you can get tablets or pills that you can take when you travel to a specific country that you need to go. Remember, I was talking about the compulsory vaccination. The word compulsory. We are going to talk about compulsory vaccination. What are compulsory vaccination? I was talking about you go to a travel clinic and you will get a vaccination there. But these vaccinations, they are categorized. Now I have the one that is called the compulsory vaccination. And then what is a compulsory vaccination? I say these are vaccination which are enforced. They are enforced. You are compelled or you are forced in another way to take this type of a vaccination. For example, I listed a vaccination against the yellow fever. Yellow fever is an example of a disease that is in other sides of countries. We will talk about them. But when you, as a tourist, you visit that type of a country that is listed to have a threat of yellow fever, you are going to have a compulsory vaccination, of which that compulsory vaccination, if you don't take it, you won't be allowed in that country. Hence, we are saying enforced. The correct terminology that we use in tourism, enforced. I believe you understand when I talk about compulsory. You must, you don't have a choice. Hence, we say compulsory. And then we have these ones that are called recommended. What type of vaccinations are recommended? I say these are vaccinations that are not enforced. Why they are not enforced? They protect tourists from diseases that are common in many parts of the world. This one, a recommended one, as a tourist, for you to be safe, you are not forced to do that, but for your own protection, for you to be safe in that country that you are visiting, you can get a vaccination on that. So meaning that type of a vaccination, if you trust yourself with your immune system, you can travel without it. Let us recap. You have compulsory, that you are forced. Now you have a recommended one that they will list. You are traveling to this country, you have a choice. But for your own safety, you can take that type of a vaccination that is called recommended. That is why they say they are not enforced. They protect tourists from diseases that are common in many parts of the world. As a tourist, you know your body, you know your immune system. So this type of a vaccination, you can take it or you cannot. For you to be protected is your choice. Hence, we are talking about the recommended. For example, I gave you a disease, typhoid fever, cholera, and then hepatitis A. These are type of vaccinations that they recommend you to take when you travel. As long as if you know, you will stay away from some of the parts of the country that has got the threat of a disease. But there is no documents or there is no compulsory documents that you must carry if ever you travel to countries such as that has got the typhoid fever, cholera, or hepatitis A. Hence, we say they are recommended vaccination. You can travel without them. Now I'm going to give you vaccinations that are required. Remember, I talked about the compulsory vaccinations together with the recommended vaccinations. In this column, let me say it is column number A. I have compulsory vaccinations, and in bracket, I say Africa and South America. These are the countries because they are countries that have got high temperatures. They are very hot. Now, because of this yellow fever, when you travel to these countries, Africa and South America, as an example, you are expected, you are enforced to go to a travel clinic where you will meet professional health officials that will give you a vaccination on yellow fever. And then after giving you a vaccination on yellow fever, they will issue with a signed, you remember I was talking about a signed document. They will issue a signed document that you will take with you together with other travel documents that will be needed. And then you will be safe in that country. So if ever you visit Africa as an example, if ever you visit South America as an example, you don't have a vaccination certificate of yellow fever, they will refuse you entry. Hence we say compulsory, enforced. Like I said when we were defining or we were explaining the concept. I believe you understand now compulsory part when you talk about a vaccination. And then let me say this is our number B column. Recommended vaccinations. They recommend you to take that vaccination. So it is up to you whether you will feel safe. It is up to you whether you know your immune system. For example, like cholera. Before cholera, I listed all SADC countries. The southern part of Africa is where we experience these examples of diseases that they are here. You are recommended to take a vaccination on cholera, diphtheria, hepatitis A and B, rabies, tuberculosis, and then we can call it TB, together with typhoid. These are diseases that we find in SADC countries. They are hot countries. We've got floods, we've got everything. Now, when we as tourists, we visit these countries, we are recommended to take vaccination in one of them. It will depend on the area in which you are visiting in these SADC countries. You will be able to differentiate them when they are in your question paper. Remember, health and safety, but this one first, they will appear in your question paper, question 2.2 underneath world time zones. They will be giving you a scenario of a person or somebody visiting a specific country. Now you will be asked to advise this type of a person. If ever maybe they talk about a yellow fever, will they ask you whether it is recommended or is it compulsory, depending on what they are giving you on that scenario. Just check the diseases that they recommend you to take a vaccine on, and then the compulsory one. For now, we still have yellow fever because it's the dangerous one. Why we do these diseases? We are advising tourists. And then I have couples of diseases that I want us to do. For example, I have the health risk of TB for inbound tourists. Remember, as tourism in South Africa, we are expecting tourists to come to our country. So these are the things that we advise them when we do their tour packages. We have TB. This is a disease, but it is a preventable and curable infectious bacteria disease. And for you to understand it, you must know that it is preventable, meaning you can be able to prevent yourself from getting TB. And then if ever by a chance you were contracted, they say this type of a disease is curable. You can take medicine, you can take medication, and then be well again. They say it is preventable and curable infectious bacterial disease. Infectious, you can get it from anywhere, surface or from people, because you will be interacting with other people or other tourists when you visit this country. And then how do you get TB? We say having closer contact with others. You won't be in isolation. You won't travel alone. One way or the other, you will be close contact with other people. And then also, how do you get TB? They say using overcrowded public transport and accommodation options. Remember, when we are tourists, we want to experience some of the things. For example, if they visit our country, they want to experience our type of transport. They want to get into Gautrain, they want to get into Metro train, they want to get in any public transport that we use, taxis. But this is the threat that we can contract TB. And then also accommodation options. Remember, we've got different options. If ever I have a little money or a budget very low, I will choose for an option that is going to be cheaper. But the problem that accommodation, it can be crowded. It can have many people in there. So doing, you will contract TB. But we will discuss how we can prevent ourselves from contracting this TB. Another thing, spending time in poorly ventilated and overcrowded environments. If we are tourists visiting a specific country and then we spend more time in poorly ventilated, remember, tourists, they like to experience, but some experiences, they comes with costs. And then also overcrowded environment, I said, such as indoor events and festivals. We are here to have fun. Indoor events and festivals, because there can be many people inside. If there is someone who has TB, all of us, we can contract. But we are going to advise these tourists what they must do if ever TB is there, because you can't see it. We have another threat, the risk of HIV and AIDS for inbound. We are concentrating on inbound tourists. We listed countries, we listed continents. But when we talk about the risk of HIV and AIDS for inbound tourists, the problem is there is no vaccine available to prevent the infection. HIV and AIDS. And then because there is no vaccination available, tourists are at risk if they themselves engage in unsafe sex with fellow tourists or local population. Tourists also, they are human beings. But if they engage in unsafe sex with fellow tourists, some of us tourists, we travel in groups. Some of us, we meet other groups when we travel, or we go to local population. Having unsafe sex is then that you can contract HIV and AIDS. but we will advise on this. Also, you will be engaging in unsafe sex, but if you do not use condoms when engaging in sexual behavior, you will contract HIV. This is a risk for inbound tourists. But remember, I said we are going to advise them when traveling. Or you can have a risk of contracting this disease when you travel with intention of soliciting sex. With intention, I'm going to Africa, I'm going to get what I want. Is then that you are going to get the risk of contracting this. And then remember, don't forget, it has got no vaccination, but we have an advice. Or use contaminated, non-sterilized syringes or needles for skin piercing. Some of us, we get excited. We get to a country, I want to get home with a nice piercing or with a nice tattoo. So be careful when you use contaminated or non-sterilized syringes or needles for piercing. You will have, because somehow there can be 2 or more people that use that syringe. Then you can contract HIV and AIDS. You had the risks. We talked about the TB, we talked about HIV and AIDS. Now we have WHO. Remember, we said WHO is responsible for making us aware of diseases across the countries, across the world, and advices on what to do. We talked about SADC countries, we talked about Africa, we talked about South America. Now we have the recommendations that WHO is doing to their documents so that they give advices on all countries, because they know we've got tourists around the world. I have malaria. How do you contract malaria? Malaria, you get malaria after being bitten by a mosquito carrying the parasite that will cause malaria. And then malaria, when you check African countries, we've got so many floods. And then the floods, water will result to malaria, will result to these mosquitoes, hot areas, very hot areas. And then immediately, when you are bitten by this mosquito that carries the parasite that causes malaria, there is a symptom that as a tourist you must observe. You will experience flu-like symptom, muscular aches and pains, headaches, fever followed by chills and sweating and vomiting. This is an example. Other may experience some, but these ones, they are the symptoms of malaria. But to further be sure, you visit health facilities and then they will confirm if you have or if you don't have. But you will be having the malaria in that type of, they will tell you when you visit Mpumalanga, when you visit Limpopo or other country in South Africa, for example, there is a risk of this type of a disease. So it means you are going to observe your body. And then what are the preventative measures that WHO has listed? They say, remember we're talking about the recommendations, recommended vaccination. They are saying take anti-malaria tablets when traveling to this type of areas that has got a risk of malaria. And then when you are there, or when you prepare your bags, take or wear long sleeve clothes, because you see when your body is exposed, those mosquitoes will come and enjoy your blood. And then when you sleep under nets, so that those mosquitoes, they get stuck and then you are not bitten. And then also you use mosquito repellent. There are so many on the shelves. but these are the preventative measures that WHO, as an agency, recommend us to do when we visit a type of an area that has got a malaria risk. Another one, we have cholera. It's a risk disease. And then how do you get cholera? They say infection passes into the body when one drinks infected water or eats food prepared with infected water. Not ordinary water, but infected water in an area that has got a risk of cholera. And then these are the symptoms. When you are in any country that you feel, I used this water that is not purified, you will experience mild to severe diarrhea, vomiting, dehydration, excessive thirst, and sunken eyes. Those are the symptoms. So this is WHO is advising us on what to check on your body when you visit an area that has got a risk of cholera. And then advice, they say, avoid drinking tap and river water because they know they can be infected with that parasite or that thing. And then also they are advising us to drink bottled water to avoid you to just be contaminated. Drink bottled water, especially that are bought in a formal supermarket, not in the street. Some of the street vendors, I'm sorry to say, they can use the very same water to do that, but the bottled one that are from supermarkets, they are the ones that are safe. And then if ever you are in an area where there are no bottled water, what they say you boil this water before using it to cook so that you kill that parasite that is inside the water, that contaminated that type of water that you are using. And then all these diseases, you will get one or two in that question paper. Please check what they ask you, whether they ask you how you contract, what are the symptoms, or the preventative methods, if ever maybe you are given that type of a disease. We continue with those diseases. I have bilharzia. And then how do you know what I have bilharzia? You get bilharzia from an infection when in contact with water that contains the parasite carried by a specific water snail. Bilharzia, it is carried by a water snail, but specific one. So infected when in contact with that water, because there will be eggs from that snail, and then you will have that. Then it will be in your, because when you are in that water, either you can be, unfortunately, drink that type of water, and then you will get the bilharzia from that water snail. And then if you are not sure, you are going to check your body. They say you will develop rash and itchy skin, and then you will have an ongoing cough. You will be anemic, you will have anemia, fatigue, and tiredness. These are the symptoms. This is WHO is advising us. And how do you prevent yourself from getting bilharzia? They say avoid swimming in bilharzia infected water, especially stagnant water, water that is not flowing. You get the swamp there, you decide to jump in, you will get the bilharzia. And I have this one, I say sunburn, but in brackets I say it's not a disease. And then because we tourists from other countries, we prefer coming to South Africa or other countries that have got long, warm beaches, together with that sun that is so beautiful. You will get the badly bent, basking in the sun. At the end, you will get badly bent. These are not the symptoms, because you will have this type of a skin where you've got a peeling, which will be very, very painful. Who says when you love to bask on the sun, to lay there to be brown, what you must do, avoid exposure to sun. Again, they say if you are there in the sun, wear UV protective sunglasses. Together, you must have a hat or a straw hat. We say a straw hat, a cap, or anything that can protect you. And then also use sunblock. Because it's not a disease, but these are the preventative methods that you can protect yourself from sunburn. I said it's not a disease, but it's a caution. I'm done with the health issues. Now I have safety. Reason why the safety of tourists in South Africa is important. Bad experience will stop tourists from visiting our country. That one, we know. But how must you protect yourself? And then when there is a bad experience from tourists, they will go back. They will tell people, word of mouth. First of all, as a country, there will be a loss of income, foreign income, because they are not coming anymore. And then what will happen? Loss of jobs from those institutions, from those attractions, accommodation, and everything. Tourist facilities will close. B&Bs, hotels, attractions will be closed because of that experience from people not being safe in South Africa. And then another one, because there will be no foreign income, less contribution to the GDP. And then we know tourists will contribute more. Now we've got so many areas that we must discuss when we do safety. We've got safety in hotels. What must we do when we are in hotels? They say, do not accept assistance, or you accept only assistance from identified hotel staffs. And again, store your valuables in a safe in a bedroom. You'll be given a safe, you store your valuables there. You always lock your doors when in a room and also when you are leaving, because you mustn't invite the strangers inside your home. And then also take note of an emergency exit when you are in hotel, so that when you are about to escape, you know where to go. We've got safety at airports. When you arrive at airports, make sure that your bags and luggage are securely locked with plastic wraps, or you've got a lock that you must securely lock them. And then also, I say use recommended taxis and shuttles. Do not just take any transport to your accommodation. It may encourage mugging. When you are at flea markets, do not take out the large amount that money you have, and then you save them to buy a small thing. And then also, we say explore in groups and keep well-lit streets. You cannot use dark streets. And then always keep in a group. Do not walk alone. This is the safety that we do in tourism. By who also? Or by police or by any military thing. And then also going out after dark. As tourists, we love nightlife. But when you do nightlife, we say avoid going out after dark unnecessarily. So you just want to wind down. Please do not. And avoid deserted and isolated areas. Do not try to fight muggers. If you are mugged, just leave them and go home. And then do not walk alone. Do not talk on cell phones. This is the problem, as it may encourage snatches and grabs. These are the safety that we recommend. And then traveling in cars. You will be hiring a car when you get into a country. Plan the route in advance to avoid getting lost. Make sure you have sufficient petrol to get to a destination and back. Because if you are running out of petrol, you will be hijacked. Drive with doors and windows closed. It means when you hire a car, grade 10, 11, we taught you on how to hire an option. Your car must have aircons. And then park in a well-lit parking area. And then the most important thing, have an important number with you in case of an emergency, especially your tour operators. You must have their number so that when you call, or your neighbor or your friend, and then at the end, log availables away in a boot, so that when you are on stop sign, no one must look into your car. I said safety and health, they are in question too. And then most of the questions in this health and safety, they will appear on your short questions in section A. You will have an example of preventative advice given by travel clinics to tourists traveling to a destination with extremely high temperatures. I was talking about that type of a disease that you can get when you travel to extremely high temperature areas. So these are advices that you can give, but only one must be correct. I taught you the previous topics on how to remove incorrect topics or incorrect answers. This is an example. Health and safety, most of the time, you will find them in section number 8 because it's not much when you do marks on this question. This is an example. I did not give you the memo because I want you to study on your own without having a memo. Another one, sleeping under mosquito net. Remember I talked about mosquito net at accommodation establishment in tropical areas where there is so much water. To prevent contracting this disease, now you are expected to choose the disease that compels you to sleep under a net. Already you know that list that I gave it to you. We didn't talk about Ebola. We talked about this, we talked about this, but the other one, the one that you choose must be relevant to mosquito net. And then because I said it is under section number B, this type of a question, there will be a scenario. And then from that scenario, there can be follow-up questions that talks about the traveling of a tourist to that specific country. Now they're talking about Canada. And then under Canada, they say, Mr. Murdoch may be required to present the proof of COVID-19 vaccination. I did not list COVID, but here is COVID. Not long, 1, 2, 3 years ago, we had this outbreak. Already because I did not talk about, because I knew you have answers on this COVID. Name the global organization responsible for regulating COVID-19 vaccination. The first concept that I was talking about. Let me give you an answer because we are tired now. But 1.4.2 says recommend the One Health precautions to Murdoch when visiting flooded area. They are moving away from COVID. We've got another disease, flood affected area. I was talking about the water. I was talking about floods. Now this is the second disease. I won't give you the answer because immediately when you see flooded affected area, what disease can you contract? Grade 12. Nothing is impossible, like I said. If you take your time, relax, and read. I know tourism, there is a lot of reading, but that lot of reading will give you answers that you are expected to give it to you. Now, when you study this health and safety, please study everything because you won't know which disease they will ask you. But as long as if you know a disease, how you contract it, the recommendation thereof, you will be able to answer this. Another one, they are talking about the South Africa who visit. You see, they are talking about the time zone, but because remember I said health and safety can be under this question. They say the team was advised on health and safety precaution while visiting Colombia. Give one health precaution after you have read one safety precaution. This one, they don't say list it, but you are going to read the scenario, and from this scenario, you will be able to answer. I believe our questions in tourism, remember I said that they cannot repeat themselves, but the content is very important. No health precautions, no safety precautions, no recommended vaccination, no compulsory vaccination, and then the agency that is responsible for regulating such. And then you'll be able to know. These are my tips. Please make sure that you start now to prepare the topics that you know is going to give you problem in an examination. We have done so many topics until that far. Some of them you studied them. It's just to remind yourself. And then with that one, grade 12, I say, till we meet with the next topic. Thank you and bye.